Hello, this is Dr. Kathleen Rosenblatt, and I've been focusing on something other than healing, which is usually my area of expertise, acupuncture and healing, for the last 50 years. And I got hooked. I've always been hooked on music. It's just kind of in my blood. And I've been writing 2 books called Youth Planet, the 60s in the Music Century. And I've just wanted to interview musicians, people that have been really doing this for a long time. And of course, there's young musicians, but there's old musicians, and my guest here doesn't quite qualify yet. But I've been interviewing musicians that have been doing this and are still, really cooking in their 70s. So today I have Eric McKain, and he is a percussionist, and he's a drummer who has played with everybody. I mean, he's played with Michael Jackson and Aretha Franklin, and he was with the Lion King on Broadway in New York for how many years, I don't know. But anyways, Eric is here today to talk about his career and how he sees music and his experience. So Eric, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So tell me about your roots as far as how you got into music and what drew you to drums.
Well, originally I'm from now South Central Los Angeles, LA, and as kids, you get into a bit of mischief, but it was this organization, kind of like the Boy Scouts, but the inner city version of it, and we joined. It was called the Teen Post, and there were several of them around the city. Some of them had like pool tables and, teaching little games and certain, taking field trips to local museums and stuff like that. But this particular one, called the Florence Youth Band, that Teen Post was the one that had music, the introduction of music, supervised by Mr. Roy Johnson. Bless his soul.
And were you just locally right there, or did you have to travel to get to that?
Well, see, that's the key. That was really cool, because it had training from 1 through 6, just like regular school at that time. I'm sure some of you young folks don't know about that now because you have all these other grades and stuff. But yeah, 1 through 6, and the first class was where you actually got introduced to whatever instrument you chose to do. Mm-hmm. Now, keep in mind, this was the goal was to get to grade 7, which was actually the concert band and the marching band. Mm-hmm. And our rewards were the uniform, and we could actually go on parades and stuff.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's so instigation, incentive.
Yeah, by all means, it was so cool. I had a problem choosing the instrument that I wanted, my instrument of choice. So I started off on alto saxophone, and I switched to baritone horn. Then I switched to baritone sax. Then I switched to trumpet.
Wow.
Didn't happen. So I started to play drums, and that was supervised. One of the teachers, instructors that was at Florence Youth Band was Mr. George Johnson, who was already a pioneer in rudimental drumming. So I took lessons with him, and obviously I put in the time, practice, because that goal was to get to the marching band, right?
Yeah.
That was the deal. So anyway.
Little did they know how many goals you were going to hit, The marching band, yes.
I mean, it was cool.
Michael Jackson later.
Right. No, I never thought about that.
No,
I just wanted to get that uniform and
one
go
thing
on
at a time, one goal at a time.
And look cool like the rest of the guys, because guys are wearing sunglasses with the marching uniform. Now keep in mind they were like 16 and 17 years old, the big boys. At that time I was like 10, 12.
Wow, how
10
lucky that
12.
you got hooked.
And I tell you that program saved a lot of. It directed us into a more positive direction in life.
Fantastic.
Because you, as you know, the things that happen down in the neighborhoods at times. But yeah, it was a great influence on me. And so, get back to the story. I got to the band, the Florence Youth Lions Marching Band, right? So we started doing these local parades. and it was cool. But then they branched out. We would do like the Watts Parade, or I think local stuff around the area. Play for the opening of a grocery store, something like that.
Hey.
But then we did a parade in Reseda. Now, and that year, this is like around 68, 69, 1968, 69, I think.
These are hot years.
Yeah. I had never, for those who don't know, going from South Central LA over that hill into the San Fernando Valley is a big difference and a big cultural experience. Today I take it for granted, but I still remember because I'm living in this area now. But that was a whole new introduction to me.
Wow.
You know, I saw only black people where I came from. I didn't see Van Nuys High School. I didn't know what was going on there. And I gotta tell you, it wasn't easy. When he did that Reseda parade down Reseda, what is that? Is it Reseda? That's a city, right?
Well, Reseda's a city and a street. It's Reseda Boulevard.
It's Reseda Boulevard.
It's an exit. For me, it's just an off-ramp exit.
That was different,
Yeah.
you know, and so it was an experience, a learning experience, as well as a cultural experience.
That's so exciting. Interesting.
So I saw all these bands, you know, and they were well more put together. Obviously, they had the finances too. And keep in mind, we didn't have a lot of finances, a lot of money. So the uniforms that we had was pretty minute. It wasn't a big deal. But the bands like the Van Nuys Cavaliers, the Whittier Cavaliers, I can't remember the Reseda's band, but they were really dressed to the T, you know. I wanted that, you know.
Great.
So there was another band that caught my attention, was the Los Angeles Police Junior Youth Band. That was one of the bands that I was really drawn to. Why? Because they had a local guy who was kind of a legend in our area. His name was John Herron, and he was a top rudimental snare drum. Am I boring you with this?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, I think this is very sociological.
Yeah,
You know,
it's cool, and I want to get on that healing thing too
history.
with your craft. But yeah, John Herron was in the band, and by the way, the band was a marching band, and we were also a concert band. Now, the police band, they had another vibe, another experience, and John being in there, in that band, with the rudiments and the technique. Marching band is a different style of playing.
handy.
Yeah, but then rudimental snares and marching or drum corps was more like. Now, today, the marching bands and colleges have adopted that technique, but that band at that time, that was just, oh man, I really need to do this. So I left the Florence Youth Band, joined the police junior band, and with that, the parade experience went even farther. We started doing parades up and down the coast of California. By them being a police band, the police department, LAPD, wanted to represent in other ways, other than just enforcing, to protect and to serve. All right, they wanted to represent in another area, or possibly for recruiting. Who knows? But yeah, so with that, I was introduced to Drum and Bugle Corps because we did one parade with a drum and bugle corps. I think it was either the Anaheim Kingsmen or the Santa Ana Velvet Knights. They call them the VKs now. That was a whole different experience. You're talking about rudiments, regiment, coordination, and
What a
skill.
training.
Yeah. So I wound up getting more information, joining the Velvet Knights in Santa Ana.
So you moved? I mean, did you?
I didn't move physically, but you know, my mother
Showed
was
up.
helping me get back and forth. Oh, you know, I didn't go back to the police department. The thing that was cool about the police department, they actually had a police bus that would pick you up on different stops. And I remember being on that bus because it had the bars. It was the one that was carrying
prisoners.
Yeah, to back and forth to jail. So we were sitting on the bus, teasing up
We're
the
not
people.
prisoners.
They're right. We were going down the Harbor Freeway, and people were like, "Oh my God!" At that time, see, everything now is taken for granted. We're so used to this kind of callous thing where, so and so just got arrested. So and so got killed.
Yeah, it happens too much now. So it's
Right.
not news.
But back then, we would tease the people because, now I think that the windows are tinted or something. You can't really see
you act like a prisoner.
Acting like that, and stuff. And it was kind of interesting. And people, those poor kids. So, yeah, and that was cool. That saved a lot of money on the parents and stuff because they were taking us into a part of the city called Cypress, is where we rehearsed for the concert band. Now, for the concert band. For the marching band, the LAPD, we rehearsed at the old Naval Base Stadium, what is it? Under Dodger Stadium? Chavez Ravine?
Chavez Ravine, right?
Yeah. There was a naval base there. I don't know what they use it for now.
Naval base?
Yeah. Did you know that?
No, because
it's huge.
What can the ship do there?
It's a huge base.
There's
naval base.
There's no water.
No, because the Navy's all over the place.
I guess so.
Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Oh, man. But yeah, there was in a huge auditorium. No, not an auditorium, an arena that was indoors that the police band rehearsed.
Cool.
Now I think LAPD has that as a training camp.
Okay.
I think that base was built for World War II. But either way, I can start talking about the history of the city.
So from there, you went to all over the state of California.
Yeah.
And then?
All over the state of California, then the local states, Arizona, Nevada.
Wow.
That was
experience.
really good experience.
So how did you suddenly go to the next
The next
level?
step, I saw the drum and bugle corps thing, and the Velvet Knights I joined. We get back to that topic. That was an incredible experience because it taught you discipline. That's the main thing about it. But that traveled all over the country. We had what they call corps season, drum corps season, and that's in the summertime. And the parents at that time would raise money, to travel from different shows all around the country. I mean, as far as New Haven, Connecticut, we would be on a bus driving from LA to Connecticut or Wisconsin. There was the show that was a big show was the very first Drum Corps International show. And that was in Whitewater, Wisconsin. I think that was the year 1971 or 1972. I'm not sure. And that was when we participated. We didn't make it to the finals, but it was just you're a kid, and you're traveling on this. Hey, you remember those Greyhound buses with the double decker on them, and they banned them? Yeah. Well, at that time, I think they had just banned them because they were flipping. You remember?
I forgot that part.
So we bought some of them. When I say we, the Velvet Knights, and we were using those buses. No, I take that back. The Kingsmen had those buses. We had a 1958, one of those old Lucille Ball buses that you see when she and Ricky are traveling around in New York or something, But yeah, and
so from there,
it just got more interesting. I got more involved in music because I was exposed to a lot of different types of music, classical music. We always listened to R&B, that was our thing, but I got outside of that. And I was curious about the different rhythms, the different chord progressions, and I wanted to expand on my percussion. See, I'm not a drummer. I don't play drum set. I am a percussionist. A rudimental snare drum. I play timpani, mallets, marimba, xylophone, vibraphone. And those instruments are very helpful within the orchestra. So, my mother was working downtown at the Music Center, Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. And at that time, Zubin Mehta was conducting the LA Phil. And she, for some reason, they became friends, or he just saw her in the hallways or something. And she asked me, asked him, hey, my son is playing, trying to play drums. Do you have any suggestions and stuff? So yeah, I said, sure. We have something called LA Phil Youth Orchestra, a youth program. So I went down, I auditioned for that, I got in it. Oh God, I was so afraid. I was nervous as heck. I think I went twice and I gave it up. But then I went back. Because I'm that person that I'm not gonna let this beat me, because my ego and stuff, it ain't gonna happen, So I went back and I got more familiar with the instruments of the orchestra. So I started listening to Stravinsky, Mozart, and by the way, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit. That's important for all. I advise that to all the young musicians, the new style of playing with all these drum machines and the samples and stuff. It's really important that you learn the instruments of the orchestra. You don't have to be a classical musician. You don't even have to like classical music, but if you really want to understand music, learn the instruments of the orchestra, and most importantly, learn the piano. Don't have to be a pianist, just learn the notes on it and where they fall. Bass clef, treble clef. That's very important, because when you hear, so many times I do work, a session, a recording session or something, and when I physically play that instrument, I go, oh man, wow, I got that on my sample, yo. Damn, dude. Like that. But they don't know the name of it. They don't, instead of saying, hey man, let's go through these 50 million sounds that are programmed in it, they can say, oh, I need a timpani here. Oh, I need a berimbau here. Oh, I need a tambourine here. See, and that helps to know what a flute sounds like, to understand what an alto saxophone, the difference between an alto and a tenor saxophone, all that. A violin, viola, cello, upright bass, we're talking about somebody.
That's great that you have that experience.
Yeah, what a conductor does, what is the responsibility, and what's your responsibility.
So how long were you in the youth band, youth orchestra?
Oh, man. I think all of that, I stopped in probably 1970, 75, 70. I was kind of back and forth, because after I got a little tuned in on percussion, I went to Fremont High School in South Central LA, and I got exposed heavily into jazz. Now, my uncles and stuff, they were always around the house listening to Coltrane and stuff. I didn't know who Coltrane was at the time, and it just used to sound like a bunch of noise. But, around the big Cadillacs and listening to that stuff, that was cool. But when I went to Fremont, we had a legendary high school educator, and such a great legendary, and a man that was really, really in it to help young people, expose them to music. And that music was jazz. That's my first love. I appreciate all music, but jazz is where my heart is. That's what I enjoy.
Interesting. And what kind of jazz pulls you the most?
I like everything. I was more so in the John Coltrane, Eric Dolphy, Freddie Hubbard, obviously Miles Davis. But I read something, Herbie Hancock, I read something that Herbie said, and by the way, he's, go there later. Herbie said Miles turned him on to listening, being open to various music, which I was already open. Excuse me. I was already open to music. And, but I had, since I was doing the jazz and listening to other jazz musicians, I was kind of turning off the whole, our roots, the R&B, and what Jimi Hendrix represented, and what was their contributions to music. You know, sometimes us jazz musicians, or we jazz musicians, sometimes become kind of biased, and it's unfortunate, you know. But yeah, that helped a lot. It's just like with the classical music, same thing. You want to get that?
I'm just turning it off.
No, you can answer it.
No, I don't.
Why not?
It's junk.
There you
Probably
go.
junk.
That could be Burt Bacharach calling you from his soul.
That's right. Yo, Bert. Sorry, Bert.
I got a bigger name, Bert.
Well, it's so interesting because jazz is so vast.
Yeah,
I
it
do
is.
talk about it in my book, and I have to admit that what I was pulled toward in jazz was Louis Armstrong and Earl Father Hines, and then later Chet Baker. But you know, softer jazz, you know, more melodic jazz. But then I'd have boyfriends, and they'd say, "Oh, you got to listen to Mama Jamal." That was one, and then
Right.
oh, it's the MJQ, the Modern Jazz Quartet, and it'd always be a boyfriend that would
Right.
pull me in, and I'd listen to like one song would be really great, and two songs like yeah, it's still interesting, but by the third song, I'd lose interest.
Right.
Now, when I listen to John Coltrane with Johnny Hartman, I'm just in heaven
Look
to
at
listen
you.
to that soft. You know, that John Coltrane that was really soft and very sensual and just gorgeous. But then there's the John Coltrane that,
Right.
and that loses me completely.
He
Bebop.
goes outside.
But I love researching this all now because for this book I'm learning about how Miles Davis, you know, the birth of the cool and
Right.
all these different kinds of jazz that he
Right.
softened again and made it more melodic and. You know, anyways, you tell me more. That's about my
No,
limit. But,
you're absolutely right, because when I first heard Louis Armstrong, I was Louis Armstrong's son. I don't know, some people say don't call him Louis.
Yeah, I know, I
Some
just
people say call
can't
him
help it.
Well, Mr. Armstrong.
Yeah.
I didn't quite understand it. It's the same as when I first heard Coltrane, or better still, when I heard Miles Davis, I'm going like, this guy can't play, you know, because he comes in with a whole nother approach.
Yeah.
I mean, not like a, you know, Freddie Hubbard or, well, you mentioned Chet Baker. I don't want to compare Chet. That's a whole different style to Miles, but Clifford Brown. There's so many guys out there.
I mean, jazz is really abstract.
Yeah,
it's
it
like
is.
listening to Bach.
It
You
is,
know, it's
but
very abstract. And so if you can just enter into that world and give up waiting for a melody and just get into this state. You know.
that's where Miles comes in. Another person that opened me up is exactly what Herbie said about him. He opened me up to hearing different things, abstract stuff, sounds. And that's probably one of the reasons I became a percussionist. And I'm not talking about a classical or percussionist. I'm talking about getting into the congas and timbales, different styles of playing, different styles of learning the history of some of those drums, where they come from, and the stops that they made through up to America. When I say stops, I'm talking about the slave ships, because as we know, all those drums came from that world of Africa. So when each time that ship stopped, they took on the culture of that arena, the area, whether it's South America,
And
the West
I love
Indies.
talking about in my book how the English colonies didn't allow any drumming at all because they knew it better, you know, that this could foment something. But New Orleans, the French allowed drumming on Sundays. And all of a sudden the American Native Americans come in and say, well, we like to drum, you know, and all of a sudden this grew out of New Orleans as opposed to any place else.
Yeah, see, that's questionable too.
Oh.
Was the Native Americans the first on drums here with their thing? Or
On this
was
on
that-
the continent, they were the first
Right.
several 10,000 years.
Right.
But when Africans came in, that was huge.
Yeah, they didn't like the drumming. The British did not like that because they didn't know. They didn't know until they figured out that drum that you have in your home here, while we're doing this interview, the djembe, that drum was communicating. All tribes didn't speak the same language, but they communicated the rhythms with that drum. That drum travels, the sounds of that drum. It's so
I love
warm.
the djembe.
And it,
They're all over the place.
Yeah,
in
they're all
this
over the
room.
place here. The sound of that traveled for miles. British couldn't figure that out. they didn't know.
But
But
once
they
they
did.
No more signaling.
Come on, Negro, you ain't playing this drum. But yeah. So, yeah, that just exposed me. And under the direction and supervision of Reggie Andrews at Fremont High School, it was just an incredible experience. I mean, he taught me so many aspects of the music business, not just being a musician, but I mean, this guy showed me everything, how to put on a production. Even though these things were small that we were doing, like high school stuff, but it's still the same thing. It's just on a bigger scale now that I do things. A concert, a theater production.
You got the roots right then.
Yeah, I got it.
So how did you get catapulted into that next level of working with people? In other words, from this symphonic youth band, what happened after that?
Nothing. I played a few concerts, man, but my goal was I got into this world of jazz and big band.
Okay,
I mean, we had a great big band here, the Joe Wilson Big Band. I was fortunate to play with them once, but man, that was one of the local big bands. Yeah,
Joe Wilson.
Yeah, you're not familiar with Joe?
I don't think so. I mean, you didn't happen to know Iron Jaw Wilson?
No.
This was a guy.
Was he here in LA?
Yeah,
Tenor
I saw.
player?
Yeah, no, well, no, he had a big band, but it was in some place like on Western Avenue.
Oh yeah.
And he'd come out and tap dance and play instruments, and he'd have chairs in his mouth.
Really?
He'd like pile the chairs up because Iron Jaws.
Right.
Wilson,
That's what they called it.
So that was a great blues band. That was something else.
So it was a blues band.
Yeah, it was a blues band.
Okay.
I think this guy was left over from like vaudeville or something. And
You
I'm just
know,
trying to
that's-
think of Joe Wilson. But go ahead.
Joe Wilson, he had a great song out called, you might want to pull this up later, called Viva Torado. Yeah, that's a great album, and it's recorded here. He had some of the great locals here. Snooky Young, I think, was on. Snooky Young, trumpet player from the Johnny Carson show. Charles Owens, I think, was in that band, tenor player. George Bohannon, and just a host of guys.
And you played on the Johnny Carson show for years.
Oh yeah, I wasn't in the house band, but I've done the show many times with the Pointer Sisters, Sheena Easton, Jeffrey Osborne. Man, a host of people I can't quite remember. But that was a whole nother experience. We can get to that later, but we still down here at the bottom. This is 3 or 4 shows, young lady.
That's exactly true.
All right, so we on that mix.
Okay.
So with Reggie Andrews, he exposed, and not just to the whole art of production, the whole art of writing and writing music, notating music.
And you got into that?
Yeah.
Wow.
You have to be. One thing I knew then, or should I say I didn't know, but I found out still in that era, which was great. In this business, you can't just do one thing. You gotta spread yourself a little bit. Not say spread yourself too thin, but reach out, reinvent constantly. I'm constantly trying to reinvent myself, especially now since I'm a few years older. Yeah. So go ahead.
Well, you continue. Because you've got a lot of stories to go, so.
Yeah. So yeah, Reggie taught, score paper. I mean, we saw music back with the concert band, but it was all Hal Leonard and stuff. It was already printed out. I didn't know that someone could actually do that and write charts. Now, do I write charts? I try to. Am I good at it? No, but I know how it works.
Okay.
All right. Am I a pianist? Can I write a song? Yes, I can write a tune, but I do need help with certain chord progressions and stuff. But the point of it is to learn a little bit about everything, so at least you can be able to talk intelligently to a songwriter or a composer that's actually putting down what you hear. Oh, that's another thing too. it's very important that you get people that are like-minded around you. And that's not easy. That's been one of my hikes, and very tiresome hikes. But I think right now, matter of fact, I know it's coming together. It's together now. I have people around me that are very seeing eye to eye that where we are.
Well, this is certainly the rudimentary of how to launch yourself, especially in those years. I think there was probably even more opportunities in a way then than there is now with all this electronic music and everything. Maybe we should let this be show one, because there's so much more to go. And like as you just suggested, we got several shows here. So let's wrap this one up right now, because this is so interesting to hear Eric McKain really give us the roots and the legs of what it took in his life. So Dr. Kathleen Rosenblatt, my book is called Youth Planet, the 60s in the Music Century, the events, escapades, and issues wrapped in music. And Eric is one of those strands that we're going to hear about. So thank you.
The strand.
Ask them where you can find it.
Oh, yes, please. Eric, how can we find you? What is your contact information we want to share with our guests?
I don't have that information right now, or I don't remember it, but I will get that information
All right,
to you.
for our next
I have
show.
it, but my colleague has it,
All right.
and I'm sure you can plug that in
Yes.
later.
And how do you spell your last name for
That's
the audience?
MC capital KAIN
Okay, that's a good one.
ERIC,
All right.
percussionist / concussionist.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, so let's take that exit again. So you're going to say, wow, this is super fascinating. This is definitely part one, and we're going to do more parts with Eric McKain, and then talk about your book and your podcast. And then when she says, how can I find you? Backbeat with ericmccain.com
Okay.
is your website.
Okay.
Backbeat.
And your podcast is on Pantheon, and talk about that a little bit.
Okay.
And talk about who you've had on, and it launches every Tuesday at noon. So go into drive-in.
Oh yeah, we have to do that for each episode.
Yeah.
Eric McKain. What it is? What is
It's
it?
Backbeat with ericmccain.com.
I should know that shit, right?
Backbeat with ericmccain.com.
Backbeat with Eric McKain.
It's not it's just Backbeat.
Oh, I have it on
Yeah.
on my ownership as the,
Yeah.
but okay, Backbeat.
Okay. All right. Put your phone down, Eric.
All right.
All right.
Whew.
So go into, this has been amazing. Part one with Eric McKain. Can't wait for part two, part three. I'm Kathleen, Dr. Kathleen Rosenblatt, Brain Body Bliss Podcast. Plug your book, Heavy. Plug your website, and then Eric, where can we find you?
All right. Just a moment. Eric, this is so exciting. We've got to do more shows. So this has been very exciting to share with Eric McKain. And I just wanted to say goodbye. This is Dr. Kathleen Rosenblatt. My book is called Youth Planet, the 60s in the Music Century, the events, escapades, and issues wrapped in music. Because I really do cover the whole century up to today, the overflow of the last century. And Eric, this has been so interesting. What are your contact information?
Well, I have a podcast,
Good.
which I'm new to, but I'm loving it. I mean, it's called Backbeat with yours truly, Eric McKain, on the Pantheon Media Podcast Network. And my slogan is, where every journey has a story, and every story has a journey. I'm sorry, where every journey had a story, and every story had a journey.
Well, this is certainly true of you.
Yes.
So I look forward to doing another show with you.
Oh, I'll tell you a little bit about this podcast before you leave me.
Okay.
On the show, it's very important to me that I have the stories of the people behind the scenes in our entertainment industry. So we don't just do musicians and the top stars of it. I'm more concentrating on the people behind the scenes. What makes the Michael Jacksons? What makes the Taylor Swifts? We have stories. My a little south of 50 years being on the road and recording, I've heard so many stories. So I'm getting down to the nitty gritty with stories from even our bus drivers, tour bus drivers, our truck drivers, give you an idea of what they go through. Our set production guys, our attorneys, our agents, and obviously studio musicians like myself. Even the lighting guys are involved. Oh, wardrobe, don't want to forget that. Makeup, all those girls, they're the ones with the real stories because they're listening to all this stuff. All these guys are in the makeup chair. But anyway, Backbeat, Eric McKain on the Pantheon Podcast Media Network. Please tune in Tuesdays at 12 noon.
All right.
Tuesdays.
Well, thank you for listening, and we'll do some more shows with Eric McKain.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
We're grooving, sister.
All right.
Rock and
All
roll,
right.
baby.
Yes, absolutely.
Boom!
Thank you.